Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a minute since I have sat down in front of my microphone to talk to you, but I have missed checking in. I have been heeding an inner call to be taking my life in a slightly slower gear than usual. And since listening to that inner wisdom is pretty much what I preach as being the key to health, I have needed to walk my talk in that regard. Today, I want to talk a bit about listening as a doorway to understanding and to love, as well as about the seasonal implications of winter and how to overcome some low motivation. For those of you who get my newsletter, some of this is going to sound a little familiar, but it is just in the field right now. I have so many patients talking about the January slog, and I figured there might be other people who resonate with that. But before I dive into today's episode, I wanted to make an announcement. If you are listening in real time, you are invited to join me on Wednesday, February 9th at 11 a.m. Pacific for a short and sweet 1-hour Qigong class. The class is going to be about Qigong as an embodied meditation for your nervous system. I'm going to be covering some Qigong fundamentals, Qigong as self-healing and an embodied meditation practice, how to use your breath to release stress and cultivate energy. I'm going to go over some simple massage techniques for yourself, and you'll get a little insight into the energy anatomy from Chinese medicine. You'll also experience a short and sweet Qigong routine based on a form that's been practiced for over 1,000 years. So I'd love for you to join me on February 9th. This is a chance to get out of your head and into your body, to reconnect to yourself, to soothe your nervous system, and build your energetic capacity. And even if you can't make it live, you could still sign up because you will have access to the replay for 48 hours. So you could decide to join me Wednesday night, February 9th, or Thursday, February 10th, when you do have time. There is a sign-up link in the show notes over at brodywelch.com on the podcast page, or you can head directly over to Inaura, INAURA.com/events/QIGONG-basics. This experience can be yours for only $15. One of the things that I really love about Qigong as a moving meditation is that it's essentially at its basic core, it's just the shape that we happen to be in when we're turning our focus from the external world to our internal world. And when we pay attention to our bodies and our breath, it's about how we can do this to expand our capacity, but first and foremost, to be comfortable. So like when a friend comes over to your house as a guest, how do you make them comfortable? You might invite them to take off their shoes, like shed the outer confines that the world outside demands, and you'd invite them to come in and sit down, often onto something like a couch or a chair, or something soft that allows for relaxation, because relaxation is a real precursor to the free flow of energy in the body. If we think about like an old dry tree that's desiccated versus a super healthy tree in its prime with well hydrated trunk and branches that are supple and can bend to accommodate the force of the wind. If the tree has enough yin, that juicy hydration and suppleness, it can invite in the wind, like the winds of change, the challenges that come your way, the things that you don't expect that just swoop up on us. You can invite it in like you would a guest, and you can be comfortable in the process. It's harder to do that when you are the tree that does not have enough of that moistening, yielding energy of yin. And so that tree is more likely to suffer some casualties in the next storm. So when we're doing Qigong, we are cultivating awareness. We're listening deeply inwardly to ourselves. And this is the time of year that is about listening. In Chinese medicine, the winter is the season that we associate with the kidney and bladder systems. The kidney and bladder system is the water element. In the metaphor I just used, like the water as a symbol for life, right? That water needs to nourish and moisten and hydrate such that we can be flexible. So it's all about having flexible bones and joints so that we don't break. The water element governs the lower back and the lower body, the reproductive system, of course, the bladder, as well as the genitals and their function, fertility, the reproductive system. And it's also the pilot light for the endocrine system and connects to the sensory organ of the ears, which of course are responsible for hearing and listening. Listening, if we think about it, is the most passive of the most yin of the senses. We can listen to things while we're falling asleep in a way that we can't really watch things and be falling asleep at the same time. Watching, we're more likely to be looking for something, whereas listening, we're letting sound come to us. It's also apparently one of the last faculties to leave the body in the process of dying. So listening is this very yin state, even when we're thinking about it directed towards the outside world. It's even more yin when we're directing it towards our inside world. And what does it mean to listen internally? Listening is something that happens with the ears, but it's something that more deeply happens with presence. I took an empathetic listening class this fall, which was amazing. And I feel like empathetic listening is something that I practice each and every day with my patients and clients and have for years. But I notice in my personal relationships, it's a little different because in clinic, I can listen empathetically, but then I can prescribe. Then I can tell someone I'm being asked to prescribe, or I'm being entrusted with asking someone a question and helping them kind of listen to themselves if I'm coaching. But empathetic listening in my personal relationships is something that I wanted to deepen my skills around. And really, so we did this exercise that was just letting someone talk. We would set a timer for a few minutes, and like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and just let the other person speak without giving any feedback, without any acknowledgement, any sort of nodding or acknowledging that we're even listening. And we're just trying to take it all in and maybe perceive what's not being said, or perceive the feelings and needs that the person's trying to get at that maybe they're not naming. And then after that, there was other things we would do. We would see if we could empathize with the feelings and needs. We could guess, and the person could correct us, basically by saying yes or no. So this was essentially the practice. And so many of us in the class remarked that how just being heard, just having someone pay attention to what you have to say for 3 minutes or 5 minutes felt like such a gift, because it's like, how often do we really do that for each other? I found that a practice of deep listening like this is so much about getting out of the way, like not letting my mind go to what that would have been like for me if that had happened to me, or where in my life I can relate. There's this tendency to want to personalize something that I recognized I had to fight against in order to just really hear where they're coming from with their value system and their life experiences, regardless of my judgment about whether or not they should be feeling this way, how I could have prevented them from feeling this way if only I can just tell them how to think and how to feel, which is, of course, a professional hazard of mine. But just how much listening requires being able to catch your own thoughts and turn your attention back to the other person. So really, it's a mindfulness practice. It was also interesting on the receiving end of empathetic listening when I had a chance to speak and say how I was feeling. First of all, some things came up that I didn't even know were issues. And when someone was trying to guess the feeling and need, the way that I would know if they were right is by feeling it in my body. So a practice of Qigong that helps you recognize how something feels in your body, helps you recognize subtle signs of emotion that we might be repressing, of tension, like very physical tension in your lower back that you might notice, and then be able to exactly sense how to move and stretch and breathe to maybe open up your psoas or your sacroiliac joint or whatever it is that you sense with your internal magnifying glass needs that attention. Because just like emotions, a lot of times we have to tune into the area that hurts in order to let it go. And so in this way, we can really be our own physicians. We can be our own healers when we get good at the practice of Qigong. We take our interoceptive sense, our ability to perceive what's going on within, and to breathe space into it where there is stagnation. Because when we can make room for energy to flow, it will. And the body's intelligence is then unimpeded and is able to get into an area and speed healing. So Qigong as a form of listening to oneself is certainly a beautiful practice that I really enjoy. A lot of times the way my Qigong practice looks these days is not a rigid form where I'm following a recipe, but it will just be about breathing and moving in ways that feel like medicine to my body, in ways that feel like offering breath and spaciousness to parts that feel stuck. And a lot of the ways physiologically our bodies work is in opposition, right? Every muscle is an agonist of its antagonist, like the muscle that does the opposite thing. And a lot of times when we're thinking about fascia and chains of tension, the way that we move through gravity and the way that we collect tension in the body along these functional fascial chains, we can release them through things like self-massage, which is also a part of Qigong, and we can release them through basically creating tension somewhere else so that area can relax. And so recognizing that really energy comes in and it goes, right? It enters and exits, it rises and sinks. And fundamentally just getting aware of like, where is energy in my body? Like, where is it? Where does it feel like it's rising overall or sinking overall? And using the breath to be able to correct that. Is it entering more than it's exiting? Like, am I catching myself breathing up into my chest all the time and not letting it sink down to my belly where it could help me feel grounded? These are the kinds of things we can connect to in a practice of Qigong. These are the kinds of ways that we can listen to very simple questions that we can pose to ourselves about what's going on with us energetically. Qigong may look like exercise in the sense that we are moving our bodies, but it's generally speaking way slower than most exercise would be going. And it's that slowness that allows us to tune in on these subtler levels where things get interesting. Slow allows us to perceive subtle. When we are moving big, we're using big muscles. And when we're moving slow, we're using smaller ones, the subtler ones, maybe the ones that have to do with balance, maybe the ones that are the tiny little ones at the sides of our spine that, again, we might be overpowering with bigger, faster movement. Just like in a conversation, when things move too fast, when you ask someone a question and they respond with reactivity, they very likely are going to start talking faster and louder, and the conversation is going to accelerate. And then you're going to be not really listening to each other because you're going to be firing back and forth in a reactive, defensive space as opposed to really listening and letting it in and responding from a place of grounded, mindful empathy. So slowness really unpacks our ability to perceive. And it's not valued in our culture. And it is super essential. Here's where I'm going to quote from my newsletter of last week. Last weekend, I was on the phone catching up with a girlfriend when she said something kind of shocking. She said, "I know this is controversial, but I love January." Now, this friend does not ski or snowshoe or get anything particularly special out of the season. She loves January for the same reason that most people, including me, tend to hate it, and that it is super yin. It's dark and cold outside. Nature is quiet and seemingly dormant. And because we're a part of nature, though it is easy to forget that when we are living our lives inside and online, it can be harder to get motivated to do things. In January, she argued it feels okay to do things like sleep late, stay inside all day, really not talk to anyone, take a long nap. But if this was my day in July, I would judge the hell out of myself for it. Yeah, In our young, addicted society, we glorify the speed, the productivity, efficiency, doing, hustling, and it can be really easy to judge ourselves for quote unquote giving in to the desire to rest or nap or just chill out. And thanks to the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, it can even feel morally wrong. But in January, doing less that you're humanly capable of is seasonally appropriate. Once upon a time, your life may have depended on it. Because if we didn't conserve the scarce resources, we might run out before spring. Nature isn't exactly supplying things like fuel and nutrition in abundance this time of year. So slowing down and doing less and giving ourselves permission to rest, especially when we're managing a lot, is really essential. We need good, rich, juicy yin, as in sleep, rest, inward time, slowness, quiet, cool, in order to have strong, vibrant yang, our creative energy, our expansive, warm, transformational energy. So apart from being this necessary counterpoint to our relentless drumbeat of productivity that our culture prizes and that late capitalism often demands, we need some January energy for its own sake. We need it because this is the time when we can give ourselves permission to slow down and perceive the subtle. So I just went over how Qigong can be a really beautiful way of tuning into the subtle on a physical level so that we can open up our bodies in just the right way, so that we can sense reactivity in ourselves and others, and thus be able to manage that reactivity, gain a deeper understanding of what's triggering us so that we can have better connection and relationships. When we slow down, we also are able to stop eating before we're over full, right? We can stop at that 80% mark, which allows there to be space for digestion. And that, of course, helps with everything from immunity to gut health to energy, which in this time is especially important. And we're able to see and sense changes in other people's voices or body language, allowing us to inquire and better understand where they're coming from. We're also able to be present with the present moment more deeply so that we are more awake to what's actually happening in our lives, right? How much more do we appreciate a meal that we are smelling and chewing and tasting? How much more do we appreciate a day where we bother to go outside and breathe the air and look around and smell a flower or pet a cat? So this is a time of year where cultivating presence, cultivating slowness, cultivating the yin to the yang of the rest of your life is super key. So as I've been suggesting, low motivation this time of year might not actually be a problem if you can accept that you are a part of nature and subject to its cycles. It also could be a sign that maybe you're fighting something off, like your immune system is busy with something that you're not privy to. Could be that you're not digesting particularly well. Maybe you're eating cold food, which in the winter is less seasonally appropriate. Time to make soup if that's the case. Give it some warming spices. Could also be that we're, almost 3 years into a totally exhausting, isolating global pandemic, and long-term stress tends to deplete our reserves. This is the kidney energy in Chinese medicine. There's the existential resignation over the state of the world and the collapse of American democracy, which, if you're there, the interplay here is that the consciousness leads the energy. So if you're kind of down about life in general, or if you're dealing with depression, it can be easy for your physical energy to flag as well. So they're all interconnected. And so finding a way of feeling the feelings that are uncomfortable and finding an outlook that allows you to be at peace with what is fundamentally a really problematic world can help with energy. And if this is you and you're struggling, please reach out for help. It can be really important to have a counselor or a healthcare practitioner in your corner. Acupuncture, herbal medicine, qigong, nourishing food, good sleep hygiene are all really important and can potentially help with depression if that's where you're at. And if it's low motivation, perhaps I can help you in a coaching capacity. Please reach out to me at brody@brodywelch.com. And while I am all about giving you and myself permission to do less, I also feel most alive and vital when I am learning and growing in some way. Now, I've had a bunch of continuing education classes that I've enrolled in. I purchased them a while ago. They've been sitting on my computer for a year, and I have been kind of putting it off. It's like the longer they sit there, the more daunting it's becoming. Even when it's like cold and rainy outside and I want to be inside doing something. So I recently just pretended I was one of my coaching clients, and I did 3 things. I broke down this big daunting thing of like getting through 20 hours of class into small digestible pieces. So rather than summoning the will to dedicate a whole weekend day to knocking it out, I decided I was going to take these classes in 20 to 60 minute chunks, like long enough to get into it, but not too long that I could talk myself out of it. And I put a portion of these chunks of time on the calendar so that it's just what I do at that time and taking it as seriously as I would any other commitment. I also reduced friction. So instead of having to like go to the website, find the Word document that I've been taking notes in, I just have the class tab and the document already open on my computer. So it is literally just as easy to jump into class as it is to surf over to Facebook or to play Wordle. So not only am I over my resistance to doing it, I'm actually looking forward to it. It's happening really effortlessly and with a sense of excitement that I originally felt when I signed up for the class to begin with. I really and truly want to be better equipped to help people each and every year that I practice. And so it's like, oh yeah, I remember I really wanted this information. I really wanted to learn and grow as a practitioner. So maybe this is applicable to something in your life, whether it's taxes or cleaning your house or writing a paper or whatever it is I would encourage you to think about how could you make this big thing smaller, maybe chunk it down, and how could you reduce friction? Because a lot of times friction is, it's like in a world where we have been ground down by our days, it's really hard to get that activation energy going. And so the least amount of friction leads to the most likely outcome, right? Similar to just like putting the vegetables in your fridge in front of the dessert. So that's what I got for you today, everyone. Once again, I want to invite you to my Qigong class on February 9th through Inara. You can register at inara.com/events. That's inaura.com/events and click on the February 9th Intro to Qigong as embodied meditation class. And that's me. And you'll get the recording available for 48 hours afterwards. So even if you can't make it live, feel free to sign up. I hope to see you there. It's $15. Such an easy investment, hopefully reducing enough friction to get you over the barrier to entry, to take an hour to yourself to play with Qi and reconnect to your breath and body. But even if it's not with me, I hope you take an hour to do something super sweet to yourself and just yin down while winter is still with us. Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.